I'm thinking we will. Just enter test scores. So we'll do that. All right. All right, let's make our new, I think we're on lecture Y, something like that. So I don't recall how we implemented that little input dialog, if it was just a function or if we made it a class or anything. I don't think we need to make this a class. We're just going to make it a function. But we are going to make it a function. What are we going to call it? Main is good enough for me. And then down underneath everything, we're actually going to have to call main to invoke it, because you can't have a function without calling it. So we need to import the library that's going to let us do this. Import tkinter. And we're going to need to make a window. Window's going to display, I mean, you know what a window is. Window equals capital T, lowercase k, open parentheses, close parentheses. Now looking at our little diagram, if we broke it up into grids and columns, if I can delete one of these or erase it, I'm going to real quick. If I can't, whatever. What if I picked white and tried to draw a box over it? Okay, that one's going to go away. We're not going to do that. But if we broke it up, we're going to see that maybe we're going to have one column like that, and we're going to have another column with the button that they're going to click to add the score. And then this thing that's displaying all of the scores is going to span. And then maybe we're going to have an average down here at the bottom. I don't know which side we're going to put it on. Leave it on this side, put it over here. You know, it's either going to be in column, you know, whatever. So when we think about it, remembering that computers always count starting with zeros, this is going to be, right, column 1 or column 0. We always start counting at 0. It uses the whole word though. I always make the mistake the first time of typing it. This is going to be column 1, and this is going to be row 0. This is going to be row 1. This is going to be row 2. And now I don't have to think it out in my head. I know actually what it's going to look like. It's really bugging me that we don't have anything good in here, right? But this is going to be the add thing, right? Yeah, that's real lame. Can't see it anyways. Okay, that's going to be the add button. This is going to be where they type in the value. I think we're going to have some text in there saying score, so everything may get shifted down a little bit more, right? Because we're going to have something that says score. And so that means that if I could possibly do so, me being the paint wizard I am, yeah, let's go ahead and put that. Anyways, that's going to be row 0. No, nudge it down a little bit, right? That's going to be row 0. This is going to be row 1, that row. This is going to be row 2, that row. And then we're going to have a row 3 down here at the bottom. How's that? I'll really impress my client when I turn this into them. All right.
Do you want us to go to a drawing?
No. Just planning it out, right? So that we know that this is row 0, column 0, and that this is row 1, row 0, row 1, column 0, this is row 1, column 1, stuff like that. Planning it out in my head. So y'all know what we're doing. If I'm just sitting here typing and you don't know where it's going, doesn't mean much. So looking at our little paint diagram, we know we need a label here, an entry field. We might make another label here, but I'm going to make it an entry field just for ease of use. It'd be cooler to make it a text field, but like I said, I'm not sure that I know how to do text fields. So I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to make it an entry field because I do know how to use entry fields. And we're going to need a button, and we're going to need one more thing down here, which is the final score. Maybe label. Maybe a label will be a good job for that. So I came up with the need for two entries for a label. Maybe we're going to make this another label. Or we're going to make it an entry. Label, label, and a button. Let's get to it. We know we need a label. It's the top thing, upper left corner. So label 1, L1 equals, and by the way, I messed up my import statement the last time we did this. We actually did from tkinter import asterisk. Let's do that instead. Then we can delete that line. So we have a label. So it's a label object. We're going to call the label class. We're going to attach it to our window. We're going to give it some text. Text equals score. That's where they're going to type in the score. Well, it's labeling where they're going to type in the score. Now let's create our entry field. This is the entry field for the score. Maybe eScore. Equals entry. Attach it to the window. Parentheses, window in parentheses. Now that list of scores, haven't figured out how to do the text yet. We may go back and revise it. Let's just call it eList, something like that. Equals, and it's going to be another entry. Not a perfect solution. Why? Because it's going to make the user think that they can go in and they can type, they can modify the scores from that list. And honestly, that'd be pretty awesome. All right. Our two entries for the data entry, the list of scores, one more, which is going to be the average. Average is equal to entry. Or did I say I was going to make it a label? So L2, this is going to be the output. The average is equal to label, parentheses, window, comma, text, not test. I keep typing test. Text equals AVG for average. Or we can type the whole word. We don't care. How about just AVG? Parentheses and, end quote, end parentheses. And now for our button. We need a button that they can press to add the score that they typed in to the eScore field. Add it to our list, stuff like that. Now we don't have a list. We haven't made the list. We're going to have to declare an empty list. I think we've talked about this once or twice. And start appending things to it. We'll worry about that in a minute. I just want to see the graphical user interface pop up. So bad for button add, the add button is equal to button, capital B, parentheses, window, comma, text equals, quote, add, end quote, end parentheses. It's going to need a command too. Right? We've decided that when we create a button, that it has to call a function, has to call a module. Well, we don't have a function written yet for it to call. Maybe we'll add one right off the bat. Command equals add. Nope. I think we take the parentheses off. Command is equal to add. Or heck, let's call it add score. to get this to work right, we're going to have to use what's known as a global variable, which is a variable that's outside of all of the functions so that it can be shared by multiple functions. And we mentioned that term once or twice. It's just a variable that's declared above all the functions. I'm not going to do that yet, but I do want to put an add score handler up here, a function for add score. We could put it above it or we could put it below it. Why not below it? DEF add score parentheses in parentheses colon. For now, she's going to print clicked. Right? We just need to prove. We need to build a structure first. When you're building a house, you know, you put up all the lumber before you start adding the walls and things like that. And you do need that main down here at the bottom. See if it works. I guess I should have run it before I printed it out. Alrighty. I forgot to do something. I forgot to actually put the elements on the screen using the grid. The grid is why I took the time to add all these things. So the score label goes in row 0, column 0. Whoopsie. Come back here. So above the add score function, tabbed over 1, we're going to call the grid function on all 5 of these controls. L1.grid, parentheses. It's at the very top, so it goes in row 0. Row equals 0. Don't know why I made it look like that. Maybe it's better if it looks like that. Space, excuse me, comma, column, don't forget the N at the end of column, equals 0 in parentheses. We're going to have to add all the other elements too. E-score and E-list and stuff like that. Wish I could kind of do with picture-in-picture, right, like TVs have, so I could put that drawing up here and have it stay in front of everything. E-score goes in the same column, but 1 row underneath. E-score.grid, parentheses, row equals 1. Column equals 0. Same column. That list of scores is going to go underneath that, but it's going to span 2 columns because we want to have a lot of room for our scores. So elist.grid row equals 2, right? It's going to be 1 beneath the data entry. Column equals 0 again because it's in the leftmost column, but we got to stretch it to fill 2 columns. Column with an N, span equals 2. Let's run it now. I mean, we haven't added the label and the button, but I just like seeing stuff come up. All right. Pretty lame. Not telling us what anything is. Maybe we should have inserted a label, you know, above that. We'll deal with it. Maybe it'll look better once we add the button. So we need to set this on the bottom row, so it's going to be row 3, column 0. So capital B, ADD, dot grid, row equals 3, comma, column equals 0. Wait, what am I talking about? The button doesn't go down there. The button's going right next to our entry field. We said the button was going to be in row 1, column 1. That's not too hard to change. Row 1, column 1. We just changed that. And lastly, the average label, which we called L2. We could have given it a better name than that. L2.grid, and this is the thing that's on the very bottom. Row equals 3, comma. Which column do we want it in, leftmost or right? I don't know. Column equals 0, putting it in the right. Well, doesn't that look ugly? Yep, that looks real ugly. We're going to make some changes. Aren't you glad to hear that? We're going to move score over to the left right here. If we can figure out a way. I wonder if we can put a column equals -1. I wonder if that's legal. Or maybe we'll figure it out. Let's try moving the data entry field up next to the label. So we're going to change this, the eScore data entry field. We're going to change him to row equals 0, column equals 1. Let's see how that looks. Getting better. I think I'm going to put the add button way over here. So way over there would be in the same row as all this other stuff. So we're going to add the button to row 0, column 2. And now we have 3 columns. So I think I'm going to change this column span to 3. And then I better do a walkabout. You know, maybe this average ought to be in the second column, so it'll be underneath everything else. That doesn't strike me as a bad idea. So, the average, which is L2, is instead going to go in the middle column, L1. All right, there we go. That's going to be actually replaced with a number as we start adding numbers to it, right? I'm going to type in a number 10 here and click add, and it's going to say average equals 10. And it should put a 10 here. And then when I type in a 20, right, and click add, it's going to put a, no. I'm going to erase that, and then I'm going to do 20. And this is going to say 10, 20 because it's a history of all the scores, and the average of 10 and 20 is 15. That's how I'm hoping we get it. I don't think we're gonna fail. I think we're going to succeed in that task. Right, bring the code back. Do some walkabout. And we've got a call to main at the very, very bottom. So if you came in late and you're trying to catch up, take an eyeball at this. Make sure you have that main way down there at the very bottom. I think I can get the whole thing on one screen if I take that out. All right. All right, so what do I want the add button to do? I'm just going to put some comments here. You don't necessarily need to add the comments. I want the button to add to a list, add the score to a list. Then I want it to erase the score field so that they can type something in again. And then we're going to need to update our list of scores. And then we're going to need to calculate the average. It's going to do a lot, but we have time. Class isn't even half over. And then update L2, the average field. Yeah, we can do this. We're going to need to create a list, though. It needs to be a global variable. So we're going to define it outside of the functions. maybe here. I'm just gonna, yeah, what am I gonna call it? I could call it scores. I think that'll be a good name. Scores equals, and I'm gonna declare an empty array, no data in it. So that's gonna be 2 square braces, no curly braces, no parentheses, those are squares. All right, subsection, to add the score to the list, we have to get the score out of the field. So I'm gonna add another comment here. Get score from eScore entry. That's the first thing to do. We'll try that. We're just going to do things one at a time. So, data, we could call it anything, is equal to capital E, lowercase s, score.get. Get that score out. And all of a sudden I've forgotten how to do something. I've forgotten how to delete the contents of a field. Delete entry contents widget Python. Good old Stack Overflow. One comma end, or 0 comma end. We're going to give that a shot. All right. So, eScore.delete 0 comma end. I wonder if that's going to work. I hope I don't have to Google more. If we don't get any syntax errors, we're good to go. And boom, we got a syntax error. All right, I've made some problems here. The problem is that eScore is defined in a function rather than outside of the function. You know what? We're going to kind of punt on this, and we're going to take all this stuff out of the function rather than define 3, 4, 5 different global variables. Nah, we're going to rough it. No, we're not. Change my mind. Delete the DEF main, and then unindent everything. And please don't just pick one line, delete a tab, and pick another when you can highlight everything, and then hit the Shift Tab key. So all of that stuff needs to be back tabbed. You can hit Shift Tab, or you can hit Format Indent. All the way down to scores. All the way down to scores. All the way down to the add score method. Yep. We can delete this call to main now. We don't even have a main function anymore. Yeah, leave add scores alone. Let's run it and see what happens. Boom. Add score is not defined. Well, that's because this is no longer a function. We're going to have to cut add score and move it above all that other code. Sorry for this. I guess I should have gone with the global variables after all. This is winding up being a lot of changes. Not too bad though, right? Select your add score method, and if you don't have those comments, great. Cut them. Come up here above this from TK, I mean above this window call, underneath the from call, paste that. So now our code should look like this. tkinter import, def add score, window equals TK, and then all the rest of our code unindented. But you see that scores equals? That needs to be cut and moved with add scores as well. My mistake. You know what, I'm just going to back tab that guy. and I'm going to scroll up and add it up here. So right underneath, and then I'm going to do a walkabout to make sure that these changes haven't broken it. Scores equals open square, close square. Tell me it's going to work now. Alrighty. Click add. Ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo. It's working for me. I'm going to help y'all get it working. Probably no longer fits all on those on one window anymore because of all these comments. Alright. So we need to convert it to a float. Data equals float. I'm just typing this again. Y'all guys already got it. Data equals float data. And we need to print it out. Print adding score, end quote, comma data. Let's see if it gets that far. Let's see if it actually prints that when we run it. Now if we don't type in anything, it's going to crash. We might want to fix that. Yep. I think we ought to fix that. What we're going to do is before we try to convert it to a float, we're just going to make sure that it's not 0 in length. This is not the best kind of defensive programming. We ought to do more. But for now, it'll work. If the data string is empty, if, whoops, back up. If len parentheses data in parentheses equals 0, it means it's an empty string. We should pop up a message box telling them that they need to add a score. Message box show info parentheses. Let me get this text right. Because if I type it wrong, y'all are going to type it wrong, and then when I correct it, somebody's not gonna. Show info parentheses title in parentheses comma ATK message box. All right, we can do that. So show info error end quote comma you must enter a score end quote in parentheses. And if that doesn't work, I mean, if that's bad, we don't want to do anything else. So we're going to return early out of the function. As an alternative, we could enclose everything after that in an else. But this is a quick way of getting out of it. So if I just click add, boom. Alrighty, we've run into this error before. Up here from tkinter import star. I wish I'd remembered to do this. You should not have to do this because star should bring in every function. Add this other import statement from tkinter import space message box. We should not have to import both of those, but we do, so we're gonna. Alright, so it says you must enter a score. Alright. Now it's still going to crash if I type in garbage, but we're going to leave that alone. I'm just going to fix the most obvious error. The most obvious error is that if they leave it empty. Is it blanking out the field though after we click the add button? We wanted it to, right? No. Cool. And it's even leaving the cursor in the right place so that we could type it in. Type in again, I think. All right, we've got our data out. We've done everything under this comment. We need to add the score to a list. Well, that's real easy. What's our list called? sources. However, it's a global variable. So if we're going to make changes to it, we have to use the secret global keyword. Not really a secret, just don't have to do this in every language, but in this one we do. So where it says add score to list on mine, underneath the adding score print, global space scores. That's telling Python that, oh, we're going to be changing a variable that was defined outside of you. And now we can append to it. Scores.append, parentheses, data. We have some data to append to our scores list. Now I did these out of order, erase the score field. Well, I've already done that, so I'm just going to delete that comment. It's done. Done up there. But I'm going to go back and add a comment to my eScore delete field indicating what's going on. Wipe out the entry field just so they can type in some new data. You don't have to add that comment. Up. Yeah, that's pretty much the top of our program now, I think. Yep. Make sure it runs without crashing. Add. Click. You must enter a score. Blah, 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 blah. Add. Oh, that's because I typed in garbage. But if I click 12, it ought to run. It ought to keep running. Good. It didn't permanently kill the program.
Error.
Alrighty. What have we done? Add our score to list, update our list of scores. So our list of scores is an entry field, so we're going to have to do the same thing we did before, which is delete it, and then recreate it using our list. So what was that field called? Our scores was called eList. Alrighty. So capital E, lowercase list, dot delete. Same thing that we did up here with eScore.delete. eList.delete, parentheses 0, comma n. That just means delete everything, because we're going to start filling it back up again. There's a better way to do this, and I don't feel like going back and doing the surgery. eList.insert, parentheses. We're going to do this cheap and fast for now. We're just going to convert our list of scores to a string. eList.insert, parentheses, str, parentheses, scores, in parentheses, in parentheses. I hope that works. Or not. Insert missing one required positional argument. Zero, comma, string. Give that a shot. Yep. Good deal. It'd be a lot better to not display it as a list because it's got those it's got those square braces. It'd be a lot better if it just showed the numbers without the squares. But we can do that. We're going to use something called the join function. I'm not sure we've done this. Maybe you can tell me if we have. What we're going to say is we want every piece of data in our scores list. You know what? We're gonna skip this because the join function would not work unless I did some other stuff. Forget it. Good enough as is. Not great. Good enough. It would not take much time to fix it. Let's go ahead and do it the right way. S is going to stand for our string that we display. So do you see that? I deleted that line. Delete elist.insert. S is equal to empty string, so double quotes. Don't even bother putting a space between the double quotes. And then for value in elist, colon, we're going to add that value to our string. S plus equals space str value in parentheses. Now we have a good string. And then let's add a space to it so that it won't be all squished together. So after that, S plus equals space. And anybody remember what it's called when you stick one string onto another? It's not adding. It's appending, but there's a fancy word the book used. Test question from the midterm.
It's like concatenation or something.
Concatenation, that's right, exactly. So we're concatenating each value of the list to a string so we can display it. And now we're going to insert it into our display list. Elist dot insert parentheses comma, stick it in position 0. So parentheses 0 comma S. All right, I'm going to type a number, click add. Oh, and it's going to come blow up. Can only concatenate a string to a string. Well, no duh.
This is not an integer.
Not supposed to be an integer. Type error, can only convert. Line 29.
0 is an integer.
Well, that's okay. That's just the position of it. Where's my line 29? That does not look like an error to me. Oh, it's not EList. What's our scores list called? The empty scores list that we created up at the very top. It's just called scores. You see this line here? Everybody pay attention to this because I made a mistake. For value in EList, change that to for value in scores. These would look better if they were integers. Maybe we should have limited it to whole numbers only because those are looking pretty nasty.
Indent.
Good enough. It's got problems, right? It's got issues. We can make this a lot better. We can make it a long text field to where all the numbers would be displayed vertically rather than horizontally. We're not going to fix that. It'd probably be pretty nice if these did not have 0.0. Right now, the user could edit these things and it really wouldn't change the data, which is deceptive. But it's good enough for a demo. All right, calculate the average. That is way easy. Total equals sum, parentheses, scores in parentheses. AVG equals the total divided by LEN scores. And now we need to update L2. I wonder if we can just use L2.set. I hope so. Otherwise, we're going to have to make some changes. So we've done calculate the average. We could print the average out just so that we know it's working. I'm going to add a print statement. Print quote average equals in quote AVG in parentheses. I want to see if all that works before I do this very last step, which is to update the average field. Whoops, where'd my little dialogue go? Be nice to set the title of this. It's possible to do that. TK is a boring title. All right, let's see if it's displaying the average. Yep. All right, I want it to show up there. And to make sure I get it right so I don't have to have y'all type it in 2 times, set the text of label widget Python. I hope it's easier than what I'm first seeing here. Okay, you can call dot set. No, that's not how. All right, may have made an error. I'm going to try it real fast. And if this doesn't work, we're going to have to fix it. L2.set, quote, new space average equals space end quote plus stravg. I don't get too excited because it's likely to not work. Yep, label object has no attribute set. We're going to have to make a fix up above. You may as well nuke that line. Delete L2.set. Totally wrong. I know there's a way to do it, but we're not going to work on it. Where do we declare our entries? Okay, down here at the bottom. We've scrolled back down underneath Windows equal to TK. And even if you're not done typing in the add score, go ahead and make this change. Where we create L2, right there. Firstly, we need to create a string variable to set. So, do this. Up underneath that line, window equals TK. AVGS for average string equals, and this is going to have 2 capital letters in it, string with a capital S, var with a capital V. So I just added this line, and now we're going to change the line that says L2 equals label. So this is new right here, and down here L2 is equal to label. Delete this text equals part. You could even comment the whole thing out and retype it. You don't have to do this. You just have to make the fix. L2 is equal to label, parentheses, window, comma, and here's the change. Text variable, no spaces, spelled correctly, equals AVGS. We're creating a text variable and we're binding it to that control so that every time we change that string var, it updates the label. Now that sounds like fancy gobbledygook, but what it means is we have a variable. Every time we change it, that label is going to automatically change with it. Everybody have these 2 statements typed in now. All right. Now this should not break our program. Let's make sure it doesn't break it before I walk around. Or not. Oh, because I typed in a letter there. Okay, good. Didn't break it. So, since we have a string var here, it's real easy to change what gets displayed. And I'll prove it to you. I'll just, right here after this AVGS equals string var, AVGS equals, quote, average equals 0, end quote. See what I did there? And that's going to automatically change what's in the label, even though we haven't touched the label. Am I not the biggest liar? average.set, excuse me, avgs, I'm just going to delete it off, avgs.set, parentheses, quote, average equals 0.0, end quote, in parentheses. I was erasing and recreating the average string variable when I did that. Okay, there it is. Now I'm going to have to scroll back down, so you better have gotten this before I do.
Okay, let's see.
All right, we'll figure it out. L2 equals. Put an equal sign there. Oh, we'll be good to go. Yeah. That's all right. We'll fix it.
Variable equals averages. That should be one word.
There we go. Just to make it really stand out. No problem. We'll get it fixed.
Let's say average is not defined.
Here's the thing, when you add sentences.
So what do we call our string bar? We call it AVGS.
Yeah.
So let's make that AVGS. So leave that word averages and make it AVGS. Nope, 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 right there. Delete that entire word and replace it with AVGS. Yep.
Okay.
Cool. All right. We really are like 3 minutes away from having it work. All we got to do now is build a string and set this variable. Where's my string var? Right there. Set it equal to that. So let's build our fancy string. This is going to be inside add score. It's going to be the very last thing inside add score. Let's build our string. S equals quote. I forget whether we used uppercase or lowercase when we created this message up here. We used uppercase. Okay. All right, I got lost. Here we are. Above Windows equal to TK, tabbed over. Average equals space, end quote, plus str avg, end parentheses. And now we're going to set the contents of our string var to that. avgs dot set parentheses s. And I know that this is a bit more alien than what we've been doing, but when you take scripting, you're going to be doing it. And I don't mind giving you a sneak preview. I at least want you to walk out of here having the idea of how user interfaces work, which is that you have these fields and you set their values and you get their values, and you have a button or multiple buttons and they call functions when they're clicked. That's the big idea behind graphical user interfaces. And that is it. Our program is done. I would like to have made it the text field bigger and put the numbers vertically and stuff like that, but we ran out of time, so I'm happy to stop.